Right then.
So I've started recording because I thought Dad and I were having an interesting conversation, but
Oh, okay.
we're doing the Q&A, everyone. I'm still in Japan, but I've got your cues. Dad and I were talking today, just now, about I'm doing a talk session at work about Japanese art and the future of the art scene here, and how I think it should incorporate sort of traditional ways of looking at art, and how there are these alcoves in people's homes. Apparently that was the first way globally, that was the first time people had sort of a specific way of showing art in their homes, is what he said. But in Japan, it's a spiritual thing, and you have this beam of wood surrounding this alcove that invites the gods to look at your artwork. And so we were talking about how much more wonderful the experience of looking at art would be if that was sort of incorporated into the contemporary art world, some sense of ritual. And you, what did you say then? You were saying,
No, um, we tend to think of as art traditionally as painting and sculpture, actually building adornment, whereas some cultures like Japan would think as equally highly of a piece of ceramics.
yeah, and then flower arrangement, and yeah, all of the accoutrement of the tea ceremony. The guy that I spoke to today is a tea master for his family going back 400 years. One of the buildings they moved, so he's one of like the four main kind of families, and they moved the tea house. I can't remember what city, but from the city it was originally situated to Kamakura, and then there was a fire. But rather than knocking it down, he now exhibits contemporary art in this burnt out ancient building. And so each corner, each alcove now, he sort of specifically chooses artwork to look at in the space. And he lights candles. And when you walk in, you have to close your eyes and breathe deeply. And then you sort of walk through slowly, and you go upstairs and around corners. So it's not just one big white room.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah, and he said, you know, the thing in Japan is you have a special place where you put a piece of artwork to appreciate it. Whereas in the West, you know, you just fill your house full of bits and bobs that have no relationship to each other. I really wanted to show him a picture of my apartment to illustrate his point for him. There's place for everything, but I feel like Japan should have, you know, if it's going to do art its own way, it would be nice if more of that was how they still do it. I don't know.
Yeah. But we have to do something to compensate for the sterility of our architecture.
Yeah, so he said one of the things that he complained about was, by the way, his name is Sohen Yamada, and you can, if you look him up, there's a little bit of history about his family. But he was saying like, oh, these young people, these young architects, they have no idea. Some of them, like 20, 30 years ago, tried to build these tokonoma, these alcoves in modern houses, and they do it with like concrete and metal balustrades. And he said, and he just sort of went, like this. And then he showed the one that he's got, which has this piece of wood that's a tree trunk that hasn't been cut or planed or anything. It's just been polished, and so the room is kind of built around this gnarly tree that encircles the alcove. And he was basically saying, you know, people forget how to do this stuff.
Then you're going to have to reteach it.
Yeah. I'm just looking at where you are and thinking, I wonder what you make of that. Doesn't look completely different from his burnt out house, to be honest. Just a different colour. Ladders and beams and
Well, there you go.
There you go.
The beam right above my head is relatively new. It's oak and it's huge, but the ones either side of it are not particularly old, but 250 years old, that kind of it.
I remember my friend telling me that they plant a tree at Oxford and I think it's an oak tree, and it's planted to mature for 500 years to replace the beams in the hall. And I just sort of really like that foresight of planting something to be used in 500 years.
Yeah, the cathedrals all do that.
Right.
So they, not just one tree, of course, they'll need several hundred. So they've planted several hundred. So most of the major cathedrals in England do have their groves of oak trees.
Well, maybe that's another thing we have in common with Japan, that sort of foresight.
Yeah.
In some ways.
Well, the charters of most universities, most cathedrals, is that they're in a constant state of renewal.
Well, I want to show you a picture of this place. I don't know if it'll sort of come across, but this is inside. Can you see this?
Yes.
Probably can't see very clearly.
Is that a chandelier in the foreground?
Yeah, and all of the glass looks like it's sort of been melted slightly. This is an English chair from Kent.
Made of elm.
How can you tell that?
Well, I can't, but they all were. We've got 4 or 5 of those in the barn.
You said primitive.
Well, in the sense that they weren't factory made, yes.
I don't think he was making a criticism.
Okay. So, do we have questions?
We do have questions. Shall we begin with the questions? Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready as ever.
So this week's first question is from Kaya Chan. Roger, would you ever consider narrating a book or story? The comment about your voice was right. It's very nice to listen to. If this is your self-described harsher voice, I can only imagine how lovely it must have been before. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, but being very dyslexic, I would hesitate to read aloud because I would stumble over words. I'd have to read it first and then reread it. And even if I got it all right, I wouldn't necessarily believe that I would. So I'd still be a little bit hesitant.
Right. Have you ever read aloud, like to see?
Yes, to you.
Oh yeah, you would have done. I must have been a very easy critic on you. I don't remember any issues. Is that why you made up stories?
Well, I made up stories, yes, because it was much easier.
Well, that's nice. I suppose if you're sort of concentrating that hard on not stumbling as well, you can kind of maybe lose the meaning. I don't know.
And it kind of makes you stumble. You have to be telling the story, not reading. So I imagine it takes a little bit of practice. I'll have a shot at practicing it.
Although actually I remember like we were doing one of the videos and I wanted to make sure that you made certain points because we had certain things to make people aware of and give notice of. And so I wrote them down and that just absolutely didn't work for you because you kept having to look and then you start talking about something else and I'd have to point at the sheet and then you'd look again and then you'd read what I wrote and then it didn't make sense. And yeah, I think you have to go your own way, don't you?
Yes. Oh, that does remind me though, because we talked about the live sessions and I was painting the Downs Braid Association cover live. A lot of people thought I meant the album was live. The painting session was live. The album is actually a studio album. I need to make that clear.
So relax, everyone.
And it has yet another title. It's now called Halcyon Hymns.
Halcyon hymns. That's nice.
Yeah, yeah, I thought that works.
Can you talk about the narration project that you have going, or not yet?
Can I talk about it?
Yeah, the woodcutter.
Ah, no, not yet. But that would be good to talk about. Yeah.
Another time.
Yes. I suppose we could say we are trying very hard to find anyone who knows Henry Wolf's estate. He has a daughter, but we don't know her name. So we've been searching.
Henry Wolf.
He wrote a book called The Prince and the Woodcutter. He also did some music, a couple of albums on Tibetan bells, one with Mickey Hart from Grateful Dead.
I mean, in that situation where you're wanting to produce something of somebody's work and you can't track down their sort of next of kin or anything, can you not sort of produce it and then keep something aside? Or is it a matter of permission as opposed to sort of, I don't know how people do these things.
Yeah, well, it would be good to find his daughter first. That would be a good start.
Henry Wolf, is he British or American, or?
He's American, and his partner was called Nancy Hennings. Yeah, and we haven't managed to trace them. Henry died a few years ago.
Right.
Anyway,
so
if anyone knows, let us know.
Okay, so next question. When a client called about a roof leaking on a dining table, the story goes that Wright told him to move the table. What?
That sounds like Galen.
That is Callan. What's that about?
Well, I guess it was because I made a comment about flat roofs. And I said the problem is in a country like England, there's always an issue of damp and so on. So I got that anecdote about when one of Frank Lloyd Wright's roofs leaked onto the dining table. He told his clients to move the dining table.
God, ego maniacy. Is that a word? It's a new word. Okay, so Jonathan Phillips asks, for your classes, have you considered redoing classic images and teach the process of individual painting like mini downloadable online classes?
It's an interesting thought. I'll think about that.
Maybe people can comment on this to say if that's something that they would like to do as well, because we're still thinking about the October course, aren't we? Which we should really pin down.
We really should. October is looming. Well, let's have a chat about that separately and fix all parameters.
So Eric Vermeulen asks, I wonder if Roger knows the ecological urban designs of Vincent Calbo. Worth checking it out. Do you know Vincent Calbo?
No, I don't, but I know his work.
I think that was the question. You know the designs of his designs?
Yes, I do. I've got a book of his somewhere, and I'm trying to remember the title. It's about green cities, anyway.
Right.
His work is amazingly radical for modern design. Yes, if all modern design was that good, it would be interesting, but it still suffers from the problem that it's designed from the outside in. So the interiors tend to be surprisingly conventional for astonishingly unconventional exteriors.
I see what you mean. It's sort of Dubai on acid. if such a thing is imaginable.
Well, yes, very.
It reminds me actually of, oh God, it was so, they were selling this book in the Ghibli Museum, and it was all of this sort of cities of the future that were just so incredibly complex and bursting with foliage and flowers and things. It's sort of, yeah, it looks really exciting. I think I,
Yeah, I think we talked last time that the city of the future should look like some kind of Garden of Eden rather than a
yeah.
concrete maze.
I have to say though, for me personally, like apartment buildings, however beautiful, don't really call to me. I was thinking about this on my walk on the way home, and I saw there's this house opposite, which is obviously sort of worth millions, and it looks kind of like I don't know, a sort of charcoal cereal box kind of thing with wooden slat bits and lit up exterior terrace and all of that kind of thing. And I thought, like, if I had the kind of money to spend on that, I would still just want a Tudor cottage in the middle of nowhere. Like, you know how people get that thing of, and I've had it too, like, you know, the house that I've had it about, it's called the Tudor Cottage in Cross and Hand or something. And like
Yeah.
some houses you walk or drive past and you think, one day that's going to be mine. And I just like, you look at houses like that, and I know that this sounds like something very typical of me as your daughter to say, but I just don't look at that, or apartment buildings, however nice, however expensive, and think, one day.
No,
But some
no.
little ramshackle Tudor kind of blacked, tarred, beamy, carved.
Yes, because it's made of something that was alive.
Do you think that's what it is?
No, I think that's a little bit of what it is.
I'm just trying to imagine now a Tudor apartment building and how I'd feel about that. Because I'm wondering if my objection is aesthetic or political. Like, I don't know. In cities like Tokyo, obviously, you sort of like, you know, you can't really build lots and lots of houses. There isn't the space to do it like that. But yeah, I don't get the thing of looking at an apartment building and being like, oh,
Well,
one
when
day.
you think about a city like Tokyo, as in theory, you could double or quadruple the space that people live in without taking up any more land area. When you look at a plan of Tokyo, more than 50% of the land is taken up with how people get from A to B. Now there's no reason for that to be on the surface. And where
Well,
people walk, it could be like a park. And there are so many buildings that don't need daylight, like cinemas and sports halls and things like that. So the buildings that do need daylight, which is where people live and where they work, you would end up with about a third of the buildings occupying that much more space, and the rest could be underneath.
hmm,
But
hmm.
you'd have to think more cohesively rather than every time you find a little nook and cranny of land building on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's how, yeah. Although, like, even the transport stuff is so efficient. Someone was telling me the other day, I can't remember, there was some pressure, maybe it was some huge event was happening, and Tokyo was under a lot of pressure to build highways and flyovers to incorporate a huge amount more traffic. Um,
Olympic Games?
huh?
For the Olympic Games?
It was before, maybe like 10, 15 years ago, maybe longer ago. But they had this brilliant idea of, rather than kind of carving out more space for highways, they followed the rivers and just went over them. So the rivers were already cutting through. So what
Right.
you get is these flyovers. They're so fun to drive on. It's like being in Super Mario. And they kind of, but they curve around over these rivers. So you're not taking up any more space. Isn't that clever?
It sounds it, yes. That works very well if you want to go from the mountains to the sea.
Hmm.
That would take up half the roads, the other half go crosswise.
I don't know. I don't know how it works, but it seemed like a good solution to me. Probably not very efficient. Although, I don't know. They're pretty fast. We'll do the next question. I worry sometimes if we go too off kilt, off tangent, we might say something politically insensitive.
Scary for you, right?
It is, yeah. Okay. So I'm sorry everyone, absolutely comment your name if I miss it. And one of the things is, so this week Christabel very kindly took the cues and sent them, but I don't have names, so if one of them is yours, absolutely add it at the bottom. But the next question that we have is, can we take a peek outside the window to get a feel of the nature around Roger's place and how it probably relates to his drawings? Potential burglar there, asking a question.
What can I say?
I'm wondering if I've got a picture, because that would save you kind of.
I was going to say I can do it for next time.
Should we do it next time? I'll see if I've got a nice picture anyway, and I'll ask you the next question in the meantime. So the next question is, have you had a piece you started, stopped, and never picked up the topic or theme again?
Well, I'm assuming that means a painting, because there are many other projects I've started and for various reasons have been abandoned, mostly in the design area. What can I say? Loss of furniture has started and stopped and started and stopped. A lot of vehicle design. Yeah, I remember somebody asked Sid Mead how he divided his work between what was real design and what was fantasy. And his response was, I design everything to be built. It doesn't all get built.
I wonder if that means in that case that if anything ends up looking less fantasy, that's the limitation of the commissioner's imagination. They think, you've done this fantastical strange thing, I'll take this slightly more normal looking thing, please. That looks like a real thing, rather than the really bonkers stuff. I wonder if that's what.
I think the really bonkers stuff is where the important ideas come from.
Yeah. I mean, like the work of his that I've seen, I mean, honestly, what I'm thinking of is, why don't we have hover cars already? What is that about? We've got driverless ones. What if we had driverless hover cars that look like Sid Mead's designs? That would be amazing.
It would.
But
a fender bender might have more dramatic consequences.
Why? They just sort of bounce off each other. That would be good.
Or have proximity detection.
Yeah, I mean, like if surgeons have tools that cut through bone and then stop the minute they touch anything soft, why on earth couldn't you have a car that has the technology to sort of stop functioning when it comes into contact with anything soft? Why not? I'm not a scientist. Seems like a really obvious solution to me. I mean, I remember being like 10 and being like, why don't all cars have GPS sensors that communicate with each other? So if something's coming around the corner, another car can see it on its map already.
Yes, we'll get there.
You wouldn't have to have anyone's information, but just that there's something moving.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find a nice picture out the window.
Don't worry, don't worry. Go to the next question. Next time, I'll prepare for it next time.
Okay.
Let me describe it though. Out of my window in my studio, we look across fields with cows usually, but rarely, but occasionally sheep. In the distance is a railway line on a high embankment by high about 7 meters.
This is quite cool. I thought I'd show this. This isn't exactly where you live, but this is a ring of hawthorn trees.
Yes.
It doesn't look like a ring because it's one of those panoramic photographs, but it's actually a circle that you can stand in the center of. And that's
on the downs.
Huh?
That's on top of the downs.
Yeah, is that like a Celtic ritual thing?
I think it's something done by nature.
In a circle like that?
Silver birch do that too sometimes.
Oh. I know mushrooms do.
When silver birch do it, I think it's one tree.
Next question. Okay, I don't understand the next question, so I'll come back to that in a second. When you are commissioned for a painting, do you own the rights of the artwork to reproduce it in prints or posters?
When I do a painting, I grant a license to reproduce it. I retain the copyright and the original, and all rights that wouldn't confuse the identity of the album or whatever it is I did. So yes, I keep all rights, apart from one in the license. I've done from day one, from my first album cover in 19.
Carry on.
I'm done.
I was just gonna say, I think that's a really good point to make though, because in my experience, having gone to art college and knowing a lot of artists, it's really easy for kind of ill-motived corporations to manipulate rights out of artists by giving them a little chunk of money and telling them it'll be good for their, publicity if they give them everything, or they just won't commission them unless they have all the rights. And that's a really difficult thing. And a lot of companies just think it's easier. They don't want to have to go back every time. They don't want to have to pay more than once. What do you say? What do you say to people?
I think it's very hard. Artists are individuals. Musicians are too, but musicians have all kinds of organizations that look after their rights. Artists don't. So they are subject to a lot of bullying by corporations. And the bullying isn't because they want the value of it. It's just because they can't be bothered not to. They can demand to own the original artwork and the copyright. So they do. And it's a shame. And I think artists should stand up to them if they can. They should try very hard to say no. And, one of the tragedies of this is, I remember when we published Frank Hampson and Frank Bellamy's work, and we were invited to find the original artwork. It was kept in a basement that had been flooded at least once. And so a huge amount of the artwork was damaged. Not quite destroyed, but certainly damaged very badly. And nobody gave a damn. And it was heartbreaking, really, the nonchalance of people. And we did sort a lot of it, but what can I say? That was, self-interest. We wanted to publish it. So it was worth our while sorting it out. But it was heartbreaking seeing it go back into the damp basement.
Yeah, I think one thing that I really hope is happening is a kind of move away of this sort of you know, fast food, fast fashion, consumable, everything culture. And I really hope that starts applying to what people produce themselves as well. And I don't know, I was thinking, obviously it's really difficult if your kind of bread and butter is whatever you can get from the art that you make. But I heard someone say something that I've seen to bear out over time. Actually, it was one of the art fairs that we went to. I spoke to someone who was giving a talk about how to make money out of art, and he basically said, if you do everything they want, if you charge the lowest fee, if you give them whatever they need and require of you, nothing will ever change, and you will be known as the artist who is anybody's for nothing. And then it is really difficult to start pricing yourself up and valuing your own work better. So what he said was start by, you know, really valuing yourself and what you do, because it's a rut you can't get out of easily if you don't do that.
Yes, yes. I did have a few fights at the beginning about copyright and stuff, but actually, fortunately, not many. I have more now. I have occasionally record companies take it for granted they own it, and they grant licenses to third parties. And I say, hold on, you don't own that, so you can't grant that license. And there have been a few difficulties about that, because what's happened, you know, the company I first worked with may have been bought by another company and bought by another company, and they've lost track. So I'm having to constantly, I would say it's something I have to do all the time. It's just to say, you may think you own that, but unless you have a document from me, you don't.
I mean, you say that like it seems like a natural thing, you know, these companies have these takeovers and then, you know, you lose track of things. But actually the amount of effort you've already gone to track down the author of The Prince and the Woodcutter on just this one thing, actually,
Yeah.
you know, it doesn't seem like it should be taken for granted that they wouldn't make that effort with someone who's so easily found as you.
No,
Yeah.
but they do. They, not all. I have a good working relationship with 3 of the big companies. There's the 4th that is always a problem.
Hmm.
We're going to get it sorted. But even when we get it sorted, there will be another generation of people, you know, and that generation comes very quickly. All the current people move on, and then you have to teach everyone all over again.
What do you think the solution might be? Should there not be some kind of copyright law?
There is. The copyright law is perfect.
I mean, this is the thing. What I thought was the rights are assumed to belong to the artist unless there's documentation showing otherwise. Was
That's
what
correct.
was.
When I first went to a patent agent that dealt with design registrations, patents, and copyrights, I went because I was involved with patents. And when I was at the Royal College, I had quite a few designs that were essentially patentable. And the patent agents did say to me, essentially, patents are very expensive. They have very short lives, and you have to patent something all over the world separately. Copyright, you don't have to pay, you don't have to register. You can, but you don't have to. The default position is you own it unless you specifically sell it. You can't accidentally give it away. The thing about copyright is that you are in a very strong position. The usual argument is whether you're working on a work for hire, which means if someone's paying you a salary and you're working on their premises 9 to 5, 5 days a week, well, then you might be considered work for hire. But if you're self-employed, The default position is you own it, but it doesn't hurt to spell it out. And one of the things you can do nowadays is you don't have to give a client original artwork and let them reproduce it. I learned not to do that very quickly, not because of copyright issues, but because they wouldn't treat it carefully. They would damage it, you know. So in the early days, I took very large, high definition transparencies, which sadly are not durable in the sense that some of them have changed color. An issue, and it's a fight for artists. But here's the thing, hang on to your copyright, hang on to the original artwork. Each of those things are a profit center in their own right. You can license an image multiple times. You can sell the copyright once only, and you can sell the original once only.
It's sort of, I mean, in the art world, that's sort of convenient, isn't it? I have a friend who's a poet, and the difficulty with poetry is once you've said it to someone and it's in their head or they've read it or they have somewhere to read it, you know, how do you lock that down? That's sort of a really tricky, ephemeral thing.
Well, the same goes to a song, but that doesn't mean it's not protected by copyright.
But with a song, there are sort of slightly more tangible things like performance and musicians and singers and kind of...
Two different copyrights.
Mm.
If you're a singer-songwriter, you own the copyright in the written song, the written music, but you also have a performance copyright.
Mm.
And weirdly, they're not the same length. Performance copyrights tend to be shorter.
Mm. Mm. I'm sort of glad of that, really.
Sorry?
As someone who likes playing music in exhibitions, I'm sort of glad of that, really. That could... Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Anyway, next question. Will they ever finish Sagrada Familia?
I think it's being finished. Yes, I don't know, but I think there is an anticipated completion date, and it's not a million miles away. I'm looking online. How do you spell it?
S for sugar, A, G.
It's the Church of the Sacred Family. That's what it means. And it's not a cathedral. Many people think it is.
This is some riveting vlogging we're doing here. Shall I move?
Yeah.
We come back to this?
It's estimated to be finished in 2026. So as it's taken 140 odd years already, that's relatively soon.
Ooh, everyone hold your breath. Do you recall Crystal Palace Park?
Yes. Yes, played live there.
I was wondering what that was about.
Ah. Do you think the question was, do I recall when they played live?
When they built the Crystal Palace for the World Expo 100 years ago.
Yes. Sneaky.
That was
Yes,
the only thing that I could think that happened in Crystal Palace that was different and now is, you know.
Well, they had the dinosaurs there, the concrete dinosaurs. Can you remember who did them?
Something, something, something. Richard, it wasn't
Owen.
Richard Owen.
Was it Owen?
Something, something like that.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah. And they had that.
Lewis had Mantel, Dr. Mantel, who was arguably the person who first discovered dinosaurs in Tilgate Forest. And he lived in Lewis. But he was competing with Owen, wasn't he?
No, that was Buckley, William Buckley.
Was it?
Who was Owen's guy. Well, I guess they were all in competition, but it was Mantel and Buckley who had that really kind of venomous desperation to be the biggest dino hunter on the block.
Yeah. It's America had its own dinosaur hunter competitions too.
Yeah, that was like America was like Drinker Cope. He was one of the American ones.
Yeah.
And then there was that French guy. And they were all, you know, taking Mary Anning stuff that she found on the beach and not crediting her. Nothing changed.
My favorite dinosaur story was that the Romans discovered dinosaur bones and they didn't think they were ancient creatures because they were in clay. They thought they were creatures that haven't yet come about.
Yeah, there was that one. I don't think it was the Romans. I can't remember when it was discovered. Maybe it was much more recent. Maybe it was only a couple of hundred years ago. But that it was like the thigh bone of a diplodocus, but they thought it was a huge pair of testicles. And that was the same thing that they thought, was that it was underground and it was going to birth some giant creature, or it belonged to some giant kind of human being. Hang on, let me find a picture.
You sure you want to?
It's just a Victorian drawing of this diplodocus thigh bone.
Misha's
That's it.
doing this. Oh God. Yeah.
You can see where they were coming from. But that was all in England. All this stuff was happening in England, which was pretty exciting. And people thought they were like witches' fingernails and all sorts of things. Are you looking up the Sagrada Familia still?
No, I did that. Oh, okay. Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins.
Yes, I knew it was a hyphenated surname.
Oh, no, it was Sir Richard Owen.
Hmm.
Okay.
So what was the actual Crystal Palace question? What was that about, if not the dinosaurs?
Yeah, I think it was, I don't know. Well, my clearest recollection of being there was when Yes played there. It was a whole day affair.
We should say, actually, like, if anyone, I don't know how famous these dinosaurs are, maybe not at all, but maybe if you're an American, you haven't heard of them. These are amazing. Google image them as soon as you have a minute. Like, what was it, like 150 years ago? These guys, they were starting to find these dinosaur fossils and they were trying to kind of piece together what dinosaurs looked like. And basically they all ended up looking like this, or like this. And they're all these like hideous, chubby, concrete monsters.
A hippo and a lizard, didn't they?
Yeah, and they thought like, and there was some like claws that they just put on the nose and they just had no idea. And they are so charming. So you must look at them. The Crystal Palace dinosaurs. They're lovely.
Question.
Next question. How do you like Bob Ross art? Do you like Bob Ross art, or is it too simplistic?
Um, I love his enthusiasm for talking about it. So I don't think I'm going to make a comment about his art, but yeah, I think he's. I've learned stuff watching him.
And I think like he crystallized those elements that anyone who wants to paint something really wants to know how to do, and explained it really clearly.
Yeah.
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 And seemed like a lovely guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we like Bob Ross, don't we? How do you stay in a good state of mind?
Wow.
Being 7,000 miles away from me.
No, that's terrible.
It's a nice break though, isn't it?
No, it was fantastic when you were here.
I did
Yeah.
get on your case a lot, didn't I, though?
Well, you haven't stopped doing that. Oh, I thought it was brilliant when you were here. I think I always feel that I can't work if I'm dealing with stuff that's very exciting. I can't go from high energy stuff to painting. And if I'm feeling annoyed and angry about some record company that reckons they own my copyright, I can't go from that to painting. So I need to basically meditate or something to clear my mind before I start work. And sometimes that's easy and sometimes it takes some time.
I remember like when we had Calvin, we used to have a German Shepherd called Calvin, and I don't want any arguments from anyone. He was the best dog in the world. But you took him out every day, and that seemed to be a good thing for you, wasn't it? And maybe it's time for another pup.
It was a good thing for me. Yes, it was actually. Yeah. And because we very quickly got to know all the walks in the immediate neighborhood, we would go further and further and further afield. And so he used to take it for granted that if we were going to go for a walk, it would start with a drive. And he loved being in the car. Unfortunately, he was a long-haired German Shepherd. He looked beautiful, but he did smell of wet wool, because whenever he found a puddle or a river or anything, the sea, he loved swimming. He loved going in. And the smell of wet wool was my worst memory of him.
It was just like where you are in the forests, there are deer, and what stags do is they dig out little trenches and pee in them to make sort of like come hither pools for the ladies. And Calvin also loved those, didn't he? He'd go and have a little bath in
those. Fortunately, they were way faster than him, but they did lead him off for miles. I mean, I remember sitting there waiting for him one day, and it was several hours before he made it back to the car.
Maybe he thought he was one of them.
I do remember he used to ignore horses. One day we were out on the downs and he started playing with another dog. And that dog chased horses. And a rider went by and Calvin joined in the chase. I managed to get him back, get him to heel. And then half an hour later, she returned, the rider with the horse. But the other dog had gone. And Calvin started barking and chasing the horse. And she said, I can cure him of it. And I said, how? She said, I'll chase him. He won't like that. I said, go for it. And she chased him on the horse. And he loved it. So it didn't work. He thought it was the most amazing fun.
Oh, I wish I could have one here.
He'd fill up that room.
I know, I know. I mean, if I got a dog that would fit in here, though, it would be a stupid thing. Be a stupid little thing.
I would say, you did get a dog. Calvin was the dog you got.
Mm.
How
Yeah.
many times did you take him for a walk?
At least 5.
Well, how many times do you think he went for a walk?
What's 14 times 365?
Yes.
I took him plenty. Next question. Are there other colours in the other corners of the universe?
Well, it is a subject matter that you do come across in science fiction, that something is a completely new color. As a concept, it's fascinating and it's a lovely mythology. But what we see is part of the electromagnetic spectrum, i.e., we see the visible bit. Not everyone sees the same. Some people can see slightly further into the red, slightly further into the ultraviolet, and some people have gaps. They don't see all the colors. The only way we would see different colors in a different part of the universe would be if we interfered with the part of the electromagnetic spectrum we could see. And that would mean the colors would be...
That's not the question, Dad. This isn't that Bishop Berkeley, we have to see it for it to be real. Doesn't matter if we can see it. Might there be other colours?
Well, there are colors now that we can't.
Different colours in other parts of the universe, other than those colours.
Well, from schoolboy physics, I'd say no, but...
What about different electromagnetic whatchadoodles?
Wavelengths.
Wavelengths.
Well, they come in a wide spectrum. We just can't see them all. Oh, maybe.
I have a feeling I know whose question that was.
You can't say no.
You can't say no, no.
For practical purposes, I'd say no.
Roger, would you ever oh no, wait, sorry, I asked that one. Which is your favourite Yes album cover and song? I think we get this question quite a lot. I think you should say a different one every time.
All right. Gates of Delirium.
For both?
Well, the album was called Relaya, but I think Gates of Delirium was a better title for the album. And it's a great song.
And that cover?
Yeah. That's today's answer.
When do you know that a painting is finished? You've answered this before as well, but why not give a new answer?
I remember being asked, how do you get that sense of space in your paintings? And I said, I have to deliver them before they're filled up. A painting is finished. It's an odd balance between a crescendo of enthusiasm and a desire to do something. I do find it hard to let go of painting, but that doesn't mean I want to work on them. It often means I just want to sit and stare at them.
I keep ruining things at the moment. I've had a couple of paintings that I just overworked to the point where I don't like them anymore. And then I carried on past that and just made it worse. That hasn't happened to me for a really long time.
You need more deadlines so you don't have time to do that.
Maybe that's... Huh?
Give them to yourself.
Was that your email, Dad?
I don't think so. Could be.
So that was the last question. I'm sorry that I didn't have everybody's names in there. Comment.
That's okay.
Hmm.
So when you finish recording, I need to talk to you for 2 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah. Is there anything you need to make people aware of? We said it last week, but I think it might be worth saying again. If anyone wants to put in if they want to join a course, if there's anything in particular they'd like to learn, because we're still sort of caught between doing our spring course in autumn, but probably leaning towards a new course. So if there's anything in particular people would like to learn from Dad, letting us know, and it will help us develop the autumn course.
I've got a this is the Kingfisher painting.
Oh, wow.
The
That's
Chelsea,
lovely.
not the cover, it goes with the logo. But tomorrow night I'm painting the cover.
Right. So you're saying tomorrow, so you want to get this Q&A up today?
Yeah, if you can.
Yeah, well, I'll send, oh, sorry, this is admin, everyone. I'll send this to you and Bud and see what we can get at. Yeah, we should get this up before the next live. Yeah.
The thing I will say again, I've said it already, that the painting session is live, but the album is a studio album. And it's now called Halcyon Hymns.
That's a lovely title.
Yeah, I think so.
Anything else? Any other notices or?
Tomorrow we've got a big meeting at the house to finalize how we're going to move it.
Great, great, great. The bees are out. Is it cut up yet?
No, because they're finalizing whether they need to do it in 5 or 6 pieces.
So they're going to decide how to move it, and then in accordance with that, decide in how many pieces it needs to be separated into.
Yeah.
Right. And we're going to get all of that filmed and photographed, that process, aren't we?
We're going to film it. In the total job will take, I don't know, let's say 50 hours. We're not going to do 50 hours of filming, but we will film it throughout.
Okay, well, I think that's everything, isn't it? We'll try and do these Q&As a little bit sooner after the live sessions, but it is difficult with time zones, and now I'm back in work, but yeah, we'll try and get them a little bit wedged up closer to the live session, won't we?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it was nice talking to you all again, even though you're not here. I'd like to do the lives again. It's, I mean, it's great talking to you and everything, but I do miss like the back and forth bit. I say that every time.
Thank you all for watching. And thank you, Claire.
And thank you, Dad. I'm going to stop recording now. See you guys next week.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, hang on. Okay. Bye. Okay, stop recording. Wait, it says it's still recording. Why is it still recording?